God, that's so hot. Oh my God, that's so hot. Self-pleasure is so perfect for romance. You know, deluding yourself into thinking it's fine, this connection, it's nothing, but you can't even touch yourself because you want to think about the person that you're in love with. Yeah. That's romance. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So season 4 of Bridgerton just dropped and I absolutely love it. This is definitely a step up, I feel, from season 3. It's no secret that I'm not a fan of season 3. And going into season 4, I was so apprehensive. But I ended up actually loving it. I think that the chemistry is incredible this season. I think the acting is spectacular. I'm feeling the Bridgerton magic again. So, of course, I'm back to you today for my scene-by-scene analysis. So, I am picking my favorite moments from each of the first 4 episodes and talking about them with you today. As always, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And let's get into it. All right, so the first scene I want to talk about is when Benedict and Sophie meet for the first time. So this is the first time they meet at the masquerade ball. If you don't know, season 4 is another Cinderella story.
Give me something with some edge.
So it has all of the archetypes of a classic Cinderella story: a masquerade ball, clock striking 12, evil stepmother, etc., etc. So their first meeting to me is the second I knew that this season was going to be great. I think that, again, when I hit play, I had very low expectations, and then Benedict and Sophie have their first interaction at this ball, and I knew that I was in for a treat. The scene starts with them running into the gazebo, and Sophie says it is a spectacular night. And I think that what's really magical about this scene too is, outside of the romance, we're able to just experience the magic of a ball through Sophie's eyes. I think that a lot of the characters on the show at this point are so jaded by the prospect of balls and dresses and everything that goes into that, because it's their whole lives. They are prepped for the experience of going to a ball. Whereas for Sophie, as a working class individual, she never goes to a ball. So I think that what adds to the magic of the romance of this scene is also the magic of experiencing this scene through Sophie's eyes. And I think that that also translates to Benedict, because he is just so intrigued by how enamored she is by this whole process. I think especially for him, who he is also so jaded by this courting ball process, to have a woman who is so wholly enthralled and so wholly just like entranced in this experience, I think is very intriguing for him. He says, "You are not like the other young ladies. It is a relief." Then Sophie says, "What is wrong with the other young ladies?" And then Benedict awkwardly struggles to explain himself, and then Sophie fills in the blank by asking if he means that they are constantly pursuing him. I really liked the part where he essentially said that she's not like other girls, and then she's like, "Well, what's wrong with other girls?" And I love that so much, just because I'm not sure if we've ever necessarily had an explicit "you're not like other girls" moment in Bridgerton, but we have had just the classic archetype of the man who's being chased by the ladies of the ton, who's just over it, he's a hot commodity, and then he meets this woman, our female lead of the season, who is quote unquote not like other girls. Okay, you know, I hate a "not like other girls" comment. So when he said this, I was like, "Ooh." But then when she immediately retorted back, you know, "What is wrong with other young ladies?" I knew that I was in good hands and that this scene was about to be magical. Sophie says, "Well, I can imagine that that is taxing for you. You must remember that those young ladies have spent their entire lives preparing for the pursuit." And I loved this moment because, for everything I just said, like, I hate how the leading men feign annoyance with the concept of women being obsessed with marriage, which in a Regency romance, like, of course the women are obsessed with romance. That's their only way to financial security and stability. if they want to move out of their parents' house, if they want to do anything with their lives, they need to get married. So of course they're obsessed with finding a husband. Of course they're going to appear a little desperate, because these are the stakes of the time. And I think it's just always so annoying to me that the men of this show can't see it from a woman's perspective of like, they're not being desperate for the sake of being desperate. They're being desperate because if they don't find a husband by a certain age, they're going to be a social outcast. And I think that that's also what I love about this interaction is like, similar to Kate and Anthony, I think that with Benedict and Sophie, he's finding somebody who can challenge him, somebody who can educate him. You know, he's not necessarily as all-knowing or know-it-all, I guess you could say, as Anthony. But I think like, just like every other man in this show, I think that sometimes he can be a little aloof and not realize his place of privilege in relation to women. So then Sophie goes on to say hundreds of hours acquiring their accomplishments, endless fittings, not to mention the 3 hours alone it takes to do up their hair. And what I love about this line is also the subtext that like from his ears, he's going to hear that as she's complaining about being a part of the process. Like, it takes so long to get ready, hair and makeup, da 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 da. But we know that because she's working class, she's the one doing it. She's the one doing the hair, doing the makeup. And so I really like how this line has essentially two meanings, and it's being interpreted differently on the ears of us, the audience, and then on the ears of Benedict. Then Sophie goes on to say, for the 5 or 6 hours they will be at this ball, all in the hope that you might simply notice them. And Benedict goes, them, are you not also hoping to be noticed? Truly. And I also put in my notes that the way he says truly is so Anthony Bridgerton coded.
Truly.
Truly.
But going back to what she says about like, you know, all of that just for the chance to be noticed, it actually like honestly, it kind of makes me sad when I think too hard of it. Like, wow, that's kind of crazy. Like they really do have to spend hours and hours, not only getting ready, but years of their lives preparing for this moment just for a man to give them the time of day. I think that it reminds me that like these types of shows are fun to watch, you know, leisurely, but the concept of actually living through the Regency era is my worst nightmare. Sophie goes on to say in response to Benedict asking if she's not hoping to be noticed, she says, I'm merely hoping to enjoy myself. And then skipping ahead, Benedict is so close, yet so far to figuring out who she actually is. But the chemistry, it's so good. It is electric. It is electric. Like, yeah, maybe I could sit here and I could complain that Benedict is not, he had all the clues are in front of him that she's working class and he's not getting it, but I don't care because the chemistry is just so natural and palpable. It makes up for all of that. Then Sophie reveals that she's never met Benedict in real life and that she only knows him from Lady Whistledown. And he says, you know me from Whistledown, but you are not from society. You are at a ball, but cannot dance. And you are singularly self-possessed, and yet you do not feel as if you fit in. Somebody online said that this shows just how invisible the working class is to high society. And I definitely agree, because to me, when I read that little mini Benedict monologue of like, you know, she only knows him from Whistledown, she's at a ball but can't dance, she doesn't feel like she fits in, it's so obvious that like she's not supposed to be here. But because he doesn't even really have working class people on his radar, the thought that maybe she's a maid or somebody of working class that snuck in just like doesn't cross his mind at all. This next part, I think like the way that this part was written, I think it like bounces like a tennis ball. The way that they're circling around each other in the scene too, and the way that the dialogue just goes back and forth, it's just my favorite thing ever.
Who are you? Where did you grow up?
Here, in England.
In the city or countryside?
Between the two.
Who are your parents?
Mother and father.
And every time I watch this scene, I just giggle because I'm like, they're just so cute. Like, this line is so clever. This banter is so I don't know how else to say it besides it's like a ping pong ball, like going back and forth. Then Sophie says, "You have managed not to tell me a single thing about yourself. Is that something you do? Put all the attention on others so that no one might see beneath your surface." And I like that she's also like clocking, turning it back on him, that he is also withholding information. I think in this scene, because we as the audience know everything about Benedict and we know nothing about Sophie, it's so clear that she's keeping all of her cards close to her chest. And obviously she's keeping her cards close to her chest because she is, you know, essentially in her Cinderella story. But also, from her perspective, he hasn't really shared much about himself, too. He's just been asking her a million questions. Benedict says, "Sometimes it is easier to stay in shallow water. Warmer and more pleasant. I like warm and pleasant." I did put that, like, as the second oldest, I feel like he's almost like classic middle child to me. I know that there are 8 Bridgerton siblings, so technically they're all middle children for the most part, except for the oldest and the youngest. But I think that for him, I feel like all of the other siblings have their thing that has, you know, captured Violet's, you know, their mother's attention. Anthony is the oldest. Daphne was the first one to start courting. Colin is just kind of a baby, I think. And then we have like the actual babies of the family, Gregory and Hyacinth. Like, to me, I feel like if I had to pick the 2 middle children, truly, it would be Eloise and Benedict. And I think that this is truly what he means by, like, it's just easier not letting people in because pretty much nobody in his life is interested in getting to know him. That's how he's able to go on all these shenanigans, you know, go to all these sex clubs, because he is the sibling that's able to just like slip out of eyesight. Sophie says, "It is dull to swim in the same waters day after day, even if they are warm and pleasant." Then she goes on to say, "Will you not wade out deeper with me?" And I put, what a poetic way of telling him to open up and get out of his comfort zone. And it's so poetic that clearly this comment leaves him flustered. And I also want to say that I think going back to this scene is so important because the concept of like shallow waters is something that Benedict holds on to every single, after this moment for the rest of part 1, whenever he's trying to figure out who is Sophie, who is his Cinderella, he always, well, he'll ask like the typical questions of like, what did you wear and da 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 da, but he'll also come back to what kind of water do you like to swim in? Do you like to swim in shallow waters or deep waters? And I think when I watched it all in one sitting and, you know, I had forgotten the intricacies of this scene, you know, I remember that they talked about water, but in my head, I don't know why, it like registered in my head that like they quite literally talked about water and swimming. But now going back to this scene and really analyzing what they say, it's like, to me, the fact that, you know, this is the part of the conversation that he clung to, it's almost like he finally found somebody that was willing to get to know him. Will you wade out in deeper waters with me? Like, give me the chance to get to know you, the real you. And that's something he hasn't been able to get, not only from the ladies that he's courting, but also from his own family. And I think that that is what makes their connection, I feel like, so much stronger than a typical Cinderella love at first sight, because they were so close to getting the chance to really find their person, to really find somebody to quote unquote wade in deeper waters with. And it was taken away from them way too soon. And so then Benedict says, "While your point is well taken about the efforts made by tonight's young ladies, I cannot help but feel their pursuit has very little to do with me." And I think that that goes back to what I was saying about shallow waters versus deep waters. I think that the reason too, I mean, like, listen, yes, is it a little bit of misogyny for him to be a little frustrated at women for being obsessed with finding a husband? Yes. But I can also see from his perspective where it's like, I'm like, everybody wants me, not because like they want me, but because they want that Bridgerton title. And I recognize how like that can also kind of lack romance on the flip side from his perspective, and also kind of make him feel like not a person and like a little objectified as well. And Benedict says, so perhaps the reason I stay in shallow water is that I too feel like an imposter. This is why I feel like for somebody like Benedict, finding somebody who's not in society is actually his perfect match, because over the past couple seasons, I think that he is in his own way been on the outskirts of society. I feel like every scene we see him in, he's always at these like loosey-goosey, artsy sex parties. He's bisexual. Like he is very different from the other Bridgerton siblings. Again, if I had to pick a sibling who he was most similar to, I would say Eloise, and I think that's why they get along the best out of everybody else, just because I feel like they don't necessarily adhere to those typical society rules. And then Sophie says, but this is your family home. And Benedict says, even more so here. And yeah, I think that line perfectly wraps up what I'm trying to say of just how, again, to me, the basis of a perfect love story is that you need to make me feel like these two leads have to be together. And I think that for Benedict and Sophie, I think that while their lives are so different from each other, they're so similar to one another. I think the concept of feeling like an outcast in your own family obviously is perfect for Sophie, somebody who, you know, she was considered illegitimate. Her father passed away when she was super young. She never really felt like a true member of not only her stepmother's family, but even when her father was alive, not really necessarily feeling like a member of his family. And then obviously she doesn't fit into society because she's not in society. And then same thing for Benedict, where maybe he doesn't feel it to the same traumatic, intense degree, but he's definitely the wild child of the Bridgerton family. He is the child that's always being reined in, always trying to find his place. And, you know, just feeling like he not only doesn't fit into mainstream society, but also within his own family.
He's there. Right there in the drawing room.
The scene I wanted to analyze from episode 2, well, it's not really so much of an analysis, but it's more so me marveling at this moment. And this is the Enchanted scene. So I knew that Enchanted was going to be used at some point in Bridgerton, Enchanted by Taylor Swift. And I was super excited, and I had no idea where the song was going to be placed, but I think that the placement for the song was genius. I think that when you hear Enchanted, if you don't know the song Enchanted, Enchanted is by Taylor Swift. And to me, whenever I hear Enchanted, I imagine a very whimsical ball capturing somebody's eyes across the room. I think before we get into its placement, I think that reading some of the lyrics, I think will help give you some context as to what this song is about, and also why its placement in this specific scene is so incredible. Your eyes whispered, have we met? Across the room, your silhouette starts to make its way to me. The playful conversation starts, counter all your quick remarks like passing notes in secrecy. And it was enchanting to meet you. All I can say is I was enchanted to meet you. And then the chorus, this night is sparkling, don't you let it go. I'm wonderstruck, blushing all the way home. I'll spend forever wondering if you knew I was enchanted to meet you. And then the bridge, which is very Benedict and Sophie. Please don't be in love with someone else. Please don't have somebody waiting on you. Enchanted is the epitome of like meeting somebody at a ball, having that fleeting moment with them, and then spending the rest of the night, days, weeks after, kicking your feet, giggling, blushing at the memory that you guys shared together. And so you would hear a song like that or read lyrics like that, and you would think that it would be put in their first initial meeting scene, but it wasn't. The scene that it was used in is when Benedict comes back. So he's now on his search for Sophie, and he ends up back at the Penwoods. That is the house that Sophie works for. Those are also her stepmother and her stepsisters. And he's talking to Posey, and she recognizes his voice, and she's watching him in the crack. And this is when the song is used. And guys, this scene is magical.
He's looking for you.
He asked for Posey. Look how kind he is to her.
I think that what's perfect about the scene in this part is it's almost like when we're watching her look at him through the crack, she is being reminded of how the time that she met him was enchanting. She is enchanted by him. And even in this scene, like, she's very good at having this tough exterior. I think that Sophie has to because of the life that she lived. But in this scene, the walls are like broken down for just like a second, and we can see the version of her that like really fell for Benedict on that night, that was enchanted by him. And I think specifically her line where she says, "Look how kind he is to her," with such dreaminess, I think that perfectly reflects the lyrics of Enchanted. And then when she says that line, "Look how kind he is to her," her face then contorts into so much pain when she realizes that, like, technically in her world he's not real and that she can never have him. And then she says, "He's there, right there in the drawing room." And this line delivery is incredible. It's incredible, and you can feel the hope and the longing and the passion and the love. And with the music swelling in the background, like, this cover of Enchanted is just absolutely, it's beautiful.
He's there. Right there in the drawing room.
You should go in.
And then the scene ends on the quote, "He does not want to find me. He wants to find the lady in the silver gown, and she is not real." And what I like about this line is that this is Sophie acknowledging that there was a moment there shared between the two of them. You know, it was an enchanting moment. It was probably mutually shared. But even if he's on the hunt for her, her doesn't exist. She is a maid. He is of high society. They can't be together. And I like this line because it's also realistic, because at this point it's like, no, Sophie, he's clearly looking for you. He's clearly on the hunt for this girl in the silver gown. But the reality is that high society cannot simply just date the working class.
He does not want to find me. He wants to find the lady in the silver gown. And she is not real.
But yeah, so I absolutely loved that scene, and I just wanted to gush about that scene with you guys. The moment from episode 3 that I wanted to talk about is actually not about Benedict and Sophie. No, it is about Lady Bridgerton. So Lady Bridgerton is getting her garden tended this season, finally. If you watched Queen Charlotte, you would know that Lady Bridgerton has been a horny girl for a long, long time. And she is finally having her sexual reawakening. And she's having it with Lady Danbury's brother, Lord Marcus Anderson. And I just really wanted to express and discuss how well I felt like Lady Bridgerton's desires and anxieties around sex were so well tackled and so well handled. And I think that so much of the sex that we see in Bridgerton is so new. And that's part of the appeal of this show, is for a lot of the women, I think, yeah, for almost all of the women, this is their first sexual experience. It's their first time. Their male lead is usually their sexual awakening. So with that adds a dynamic to these sex scenes and to the sexiness that I think that viewers tend to enjoy and tend to like watching. Not only that, on top of that, they're all very, very, very young. I feel like the oldest female lead we had was Kate, and she was 26, I think, at the time. So nobody is in their 50s like Violet Bridgerton is, having, you know, a sexual rediscovery. And Violet Bridgerton is a grown woman. She is a grown woman. She's in her 50s. She's had 8 kids. She experienced a very long, happy, loving sexual marriage. And she's also loved and she's lost. She's grieved. She's experienced life. And I think that that adds so much nuance to this connection with Lord Anderson, and I think that it's very, realistic that she would be feeling all kinds of anxieties going into it. And I think that even more nuances is that she still loves her husband. Just because she's feeling hot and bothered by this new guy doesn't take away from the love that she still has for her husband. And I'm sure that there's a certain level of guilt also swirling up in her of like, I want this new person, but does that disrespect the memory of my husband? Yes, I'm still here. Yes, I still have needs. Yes, I still have desires and wants, but I had this husband who was my person, who was the love of my life, and now he's not here. And is this disrespectful to him to do this now? I just like how we hit on all of those notes of, the fact that she's still a sexual being well into her 50s, the concept of experiencing desire and attraction again after grieving a lover. I like the concept of, having sex for the first time after having kids and after a body that's been well lived in. And I think that this makes her monologue all the more interesting, and that's why we're going to break it down. So Violet comes in to speak to Lord Anderson, and she's clearly very nervous, so Lord Anderson has the staff leave. And Violet says, "It has been a long time since I spent time alone with someone, a man. Edmund was my husband, and there was no one after him, so I put that part of myself away when he died." And I think that opening the monologue here, it tells us our first main characteristic of Violet, and that was that she loved her husband. That is no secret that she loved her husband. But I think reiterating it at the beginning of this monologue shows that even though she has this desire for this new man, that doesn't change the fact that the love of her life has and always will be Edmund. I think last night when I was getting ready for bed, I was thinking about the line that she said in season 2 when it's a flashback in Anthony's head. And she says that Edmund was the air that I breathe, and now there's no air. Which is so sad. It's so sad, and when I think about it, I get a little worked up and teary-eyed because, man, Violet Bridgerton, she's been through some stuff. Violet says, "My children, and they are marvelous, but all of them, they are like dogs on a fox, and I cannot be the fox." And I think that this shows, her second arc of this season, which is feeling overwhelmed by all of her kids, all 8 of them, feeling responsible for them, even though many of them are grown-ups at this point, and the weight of dealing with them on her own is starting to get to her as well. And then Violet says, "We would need to be discreet, and I cannot cause them any harm." And I love how she acknowledges the hurt and mixed feelings her kids might have about this, even though technically it's none of their business and she's a grown woman and she can do whatever she wants. I like that she's still keeping her kids' interest at heart, where it's like she's still respecting, that is still their father, and that, if they knew that maybe she was seeing other people, that might deeply, deeply hurt and impact her kids. Violet goes on to say, "I cannot answer the questions they'll have. I cannot be their fox," which I took that as I got to put me first. Miss Violet, she has needs, okay? She really can't be everything to everyone. And then Violet says, "I am mature now. My body, I have had 8 children with this body. I am different now." And something else I wanted to add on to this is that the last time that Violet had sex for the first time, her body looked completely different. The last time she had sex for the first time, it was before any pregnancy. It was when she was still young. I mean, our bodies age, with or without having kids. And so I think it's also interesting, to see that she's having this sexual discovery now with a completely different body than the time she had her first sexual awakening. And she says, "All of me is different." And not only is her body different from the last time she had sex for the first time, but she's different. I think that, she's experienced so much of life in the time since she got married. And, she knows her body better. She knows what feels good. She has more wisdom. And also grief changes you. Fundamentally. She's fundamentally a different person. And Violet says, How will that be? Well, it worked with Edmund very well, but I do not know if it was because it was my Edmund. And I interpreted that line as like, am I good at sex, or was the sex good because he was my person, because he was the love of my life? Now, again, I don't necessarily feel like anybody's good or bad at sex, but I understand, these anxieties and these fears. And then she says, will it feel like that with another? How could it? But perhaps it can. And I think that like that sentence, those sentences are so layered to me, because it's like, how could it feel that way with another? Like, well, no, it can't. It's never going to feel the way it felt with Edmund with somebody else, because that was Edmund and this is somebody else. But then, the line of like, perhaps it can, I interpret that as like, maybe I can have good sex with somebody that's not Edmund, but it just won't be the same. It'll be different. And Violet says, I want it to. I want to be seen and touched by you. And I think that this is such a vulnerable line for her to admit, that like, I want to be desired. I want to feel sexy. I think that that's such a vulnerable thing to say, and such a real thing to admit. And I think it's one of the most humanizing parts of this whole monologue. And she says she's nervous and understands if he doesn't want her. And then he says the line that I feel is peak romance. It might be, listen, this is Benedict and Sophie's story. This might be the sexiest line in the whole show. He says, I want you. If possible, I want you more. You've shown me yourself. I'm grateful. We need be in no hurry. I'm content as long as I'm in your presence.
I want you. If possible, I want you more. You've shown me yourself. I'm grateful. We need be in no hurry. I'm content as long as I'm in your presence.
Wow. What has the past 2 months taught me? That consent is sexy. I did know this, but like, once romance authors unlocked once romance authors unlocked that consent is a very, very sexy thing, I swear they never looked back, and I'm so grateful for it, because to me, this is romance. That's what I put in my notes right here. This is romance. Like, consent is so sexy to me. The concept of like, I want you so badly, but we're gonna go at your pace. We're gonna go with what makes you feel good. Oh my God, that's so hot. Oh my God, that's so hot. Like, literally, it reminds me of, Heated Rivalry crossover. It reminds me of Ember and Ice, the audio erotica that Connor and Hudson from Heated Rivalry did. It reminds me of in Dane's chapter when he's describing the first time that he and Finn, which is Hudson's character, when they had penetrative sex for the first time. And he said, there was one thing we hadn't done yet, but I was fine. I was going at his pace. It's never not gonna drive me nuts, the concept of like, I want you and I know you want me, but you're not ready, so we're gonna go at your pace. That's so fucking sexy. I'm sorry. Anyways, so that's the moment I really liked the best in episode what episode was that? In episode 3 of Bridgerton. The last thing I wanted to talk about was from episode 4, obviously, and we are talking about the self-pleasure scene from Sophie. So one thing you got to know about me is I love masturbation. It's my favorite topic ever. I mean, all things related to sex are my favorite topic, but nothing is more my favorite topic than masturbation. And I think that admitting to liking masturbation as a woman is kind of revolutionary. I've been thinking about this all day, thinking about why I like masturbation and talking about masturbation so much. Is that I just feel like admitting to doing it, admitting to liking it, I think is kind of bold as a woman, just for a variety of reasons. I think that men are allowed to talk about masturbation all the time and it's not weird, but I think there's a weird tabooness over self-pleasure for women. But to me, self-pleasure is so perfect for romance. I don't know why more stories haven't unlocked the gift that is self-pleasure, because to me, masturbation in a romance story perfectly captures yearning and desire. The concept of having a passion and a fire for somebody else in you that's so strong that you can't help but to just touch yourself is romantic. It's so romantic to me, especially in a story that's already supposed to be steamy, that has that context to it. I think that there's just nothing sexier than a self-pleasure scene. And I actually think it's sexiest when it's a woman self-pleasuring herself. And I wanted to get into Sophie's self-pleasure scene. So this scene is coming right after Sophie and Benedict agreed to end their connection. She is now working full-time at the Bridgerton house. She loves her new job. It's, more of a work-life balance. It's less toxic. The labor is distributed over much more people. And so she does not want to do anything more with Benedict to mess that up. But the connection is so strong that she even considers leaving Bridgerton house, even with all its benefits. In this scene, she can't sleep, presumably because she's thinking about Benedict. She begins to self-pleasure herself, and she gets into it, and then she stops, frustrated. And I took that as she can no longer satisfy herself by herself, because now her body yearns and burns for Benedict. And that is just peak romance to me. I'm sorry. I don't know, the concept of deluding yourself into thinking it's fine, this connection, it's nothing, but you can't even touch yourself because you want to think about the person that you're in love with. Yeah, that's romance. I'm sorry. And I think that mirroring that to Daphne's masturbation scene in season 1, I think that, in Daphne's masturbation scene, I think her scene is the first time she ever does it, which is, I think, different from Sophie's scene. In this scene, I can clearly tell that Sophie has done this before, because it's almost like she's tossing and turning. She can't sleep. So what is she going to do to maybe put herself to sleep? Start touching herself. But in Daphne's scene, she's doing it for the first time. It's after Simon tells her that she should do it. And to me, this scene is the epitome of self-discovery. It's the ownership of her sexual pleasure. It's honestly empowering if you think too hard about it. But it so similarly captures the yearning. And I think Bridgerton is the only show that hasn't shied away from female self-pleasure. I really can't think of any other show that has sex in it like this that is fine showing a female masturbation scene. But if you do know, let me know down below if you know any shows that have had a female self-pleasure scene. And I think I've been thinking about masturbation a lot in romance because, as you guys know, I've been working my way through the Game Changer series, obviously all roads lead back to Heated Rivalry. And the book that I really liked, I didn't realize that people didn't like it. It's Common Goal. So I'm not going to spoil anything in Common Goal, but if you want to know the basis of Common Goal is that it's an age gap relationship. So Eric is a hockey player. He's 41. Kyle is a grad student. He's 25. And there are many scenes in Common Goal where Eric gets a little worked up by Kyle being his sexy self, and then he starts, to self-pleasure. And I think that is romantic. The second that we wake up and realize that sex is an integral part to romance, and that romance shouldn't be scared of sex, I think we're going to tap into a beautiful market. I think somebody should let me direct a romance film, because I think what have we learned this year is that the girls yearn to be horned up, but they also yearn for romance, and they also yearn for connection. And I think that the second we realize that when we combine that human emotional connection with just raw, pure, horny desire, I think that's when the best romance content gets made. But that is all I have for you guys today. I'm so excited for part 2. I'm a little annoyed that it's not going to be released until the end of this month, but it's the shortest month of the year, so the wait won't be that long. Just a little heads up housekeeping. Moving forward, I will no longer be putting edits at the end of my videos. If you can't tell, I have reached 1,000 subscribers. Thank you to all of you who have subscribed. So I'm trying to monetize my videos, and I have a bad habit of putting copyrighted music in my videos, and I don't regret that because I love sharing my edits with you guys. I think sharing my favorite Some I Turn Pretty and Heated Rivalry edits has been like the highlight of, you know, this channel, because like I just like love edits as a medium, but your girl's got to start making money somehow, so I can't put them in these videos. I am trying to work on a Patreon, but that's probably going to take me a while, but I'll find a way to share with you guys my favorite edits as I find them. Maybe I'll link them, you know, in posts or whatever. I don't know, but thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. Love my little romance family I have here on YouTube. So yeah, and with that, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.
I said you fuckers owe me $1,000 for every goal I score. You each owe me $3,000 fucking dollars. Stop, Ozzy. You all agree that?